Hey everybody, and welcome to another tutorial lesson. I'm going to show you how to go from this to something like this. And it's not really too difficult to achieve. Just a texture, a few extrusions. You're going to need a specific add-on for this, and a couple clicks, keyframes, and then you've got a nice smooth little space animation going on. And to spice things up, we can add an HDR from the Blender kit to make it look a little bit more realistic. So let's not waste any time and let's jump right in. Okay, the first thing I'm going to be using is the Mesh Poly add-on. It's only $6, and this Mesh Poly is going to actually allow you to create some very abstract and very cool mazes, extrusions, and other things that are going to be very helpful to instantly create. So $6, pretty good buy. You get it for life. Obviously there's any updates and you get that free. So this is highly recommended from the Blender market. And the second add-on I'm going to be using is going to be Eat the Future Camera Shakeify. So this is absolutely free. All you have to do is go over here to the github.com and you can type in Eat the Future Camera Shakeify, and I will provide a link. Hit code, download the zip, jump over to Blender. Of course, you hit Edit, Preferences, and then all you have to do is come in to your Edit and Preferences, click Install, find out where you put it, click on it, and click Install Add-on. Then make sure you just check it on. You can save your preferences and then hit the X. And a third add-on that I'm going to be using, and you're absolutely going to have, will be the Blender kit. Absolutely free. There are some pay assets within it, but you have more than enough, hundreds if not even thousands of options. So blenderkit.com/get-blenderkit, and then just download that, and it is an add-on, so you will add it in the exact same way under Edit and Preferences. And you'll see it in here as Blender Kit Online Asset Library. So, and note that that is an online library. So when you pull that up and you have Blender Kit here, and you go to something like Materials and just hit Enter in the search bar, it'll pop up everything that it has to offer, and it will tell you how many results. Found 4,326 different textures, so that's a good bit to choose from. But we're only going to be using a couple of different textures and one HDRI. Alright, so for this to work, you're going to need to pull up the Mesh Poly first. So I'll clean up the screen a little bit. Now, understand that if you click Apply on any one of these options too many times, you may crash your computer. And if you have a slower PC, then you're going to want to keep your settings a little bit lower. In other words, don't hit the extrude button too many times, because that's what we're going to be working on first. They do have the object cuber, the abstract maker. You can turn something low poly. That's a little glitchy. But the face extrusion, the maze generator, and the level maker are all tip top. And then you can do transforms, which will just kind of offset and stretch your mesh out, almost like you kind of scaled it on a certain axis locally instead of globally. Now, before we start, in order to get the city to look the way you want, we'll jump into edit mode with the cube, hit W, and then go to subdivide, and you see it's subdivided the mesh. But what you're going to want to do is do it at least 15 times. Alright, so just be aware that the subdivide menu that comes up here will disappear if you in any way click off to do anything else and you try to go back. It's gone, so you get one shot at that. So now there's some specific settings that we're going to use to achieve that, and if you go under the face extrusion for minimum, go ahead and type in 2.35 and hit enter. then go to the max and put 0.29. And somewhere in this range is pretty good. You can play around with it and get what you want. Then you can just click extrude one time, and now you've got a small but basic version of the larger model that I created. Now if you want, you can kind of ramp these things up. You can hit the back button and you can kind of ramp this up a little bit and hit extrude and get it just a little bit longer if you want, and bring the max up to 5. So it's kind of however you want to do it. Now here's the cool part. We'll go over to the Eevee engine. You can click on viewport shading, turn off scene lights, and turn off scene world so that we can see our actual material going in. Now we can come down and select the Blender kit. And this is real easy to use. You don't even have to be logged in. Just under materials, type in SCI-FI for sci-fi and hit enter. And what's going to happen here is it's going to pop up with 101 different results, and if it doesn't show, just hit enter again. Sometimes it doesn't want to show up. And there's one specific texture we're going to be using for this, and that is the procedural damaged sci-fi texture. So what we can do is just left click, drag it over, and that little white stick is basically your arrow. Just release your left mouse key and give it a second. It'll find the asset and then it will upload it. And I'm going to press N to remove all of that. Alright, very good. So now you've got this effectively very massive city setup, and all you have to do from here is create a camera animation to kind of whip through the scene. So what you can do to make this real easy, because trying to arrange this and get into the indoor corridors is going to be pretty difficult unless you're very good at keyframing and other animations. So what I'll do is I'm just going to hit Control middle mouse and kind of move into one spot. I'll put the mouse right here, or the 3D cursor, and I'll hit Shift A, and I'm going to drop in my camera right here so it's looking in. Then I'll just hit 0, and now I'm inside. So from here I can hit N and go to View, and now I want to lock the camera to view. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I can move this camera on axis. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of rotate this. Looks like the Y will do just fine. And now I want to come down with the camera selected, and if you don't see the camera here, then you're not where you should be. So click this, and then we'll go to clip start and just bring that all the way to the left. And what that's going to do is just put the camera inside the corridor where we're working. And I also like to drop down the camera menu and go under size and put in something around 44. Just gives it a little bit of a better perspective. Now this would be a good point to hit your save button, so Control S, and I'm going to save this as extrusion number 2 because this is the second one I'm working on, and I'll just save that blend file. So now, and this is a little texture heavy, so if you want to choose a different texture, that kind of procedural texture that kind of wraps itself around the mesh where you don't have to scale it or anything, then choose something that works better for your PC. But this one should work pretty good. And if you don't want to view this this way, you can go into solid mode and then something like random or something. You can choose a bunch of different things, met caps and things like that. I think all these look terrible, so I'm sticking with the Eevee engine, which is real-time rendering. It should work out. Alright, next thing you want to do is kind of pull this up right here. I have my asset library, but if I just click and add a timeline, which should be in your layout by default, you don't have to get that, but if you don't have anything here, you can just select like on the side and right click somewhere and do a horizontal split, and then left click, drop it, go in and select timeline, and now I'm just going to join these, get rid of them. Alright, so now with the camera selected, I can hit G and X, and I can just kind of move perfectly in and through the corridor. And this is going to be pretty neat for an animation. So I'll just right click, drop that, go to frame 1, probably just do something like 300 frames. You don't have to do that. You choose whatever you want. Just know the fewer frames between the keyframes, the animation is going to run a little faster. So I'm going to tap I with the camera selected inside the viewport, and I'm going to select location, rotation, scale. So that way if you kind of move the camera around, you rotate it, or you scale something, it picks it up. Now from here you have to move it out somewhere, so I'm going to go to like 150 and hit G and X, and I'm going to move a good bit down the corridor to probably this little open spot, like right here. This looks good, and I'll hit I and kind of rinse and repeat. So now I'm actually going to go back to frame 1, and I'll hit the right arrow one time, so I'm on frame 2. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of rotate the camera, just tap R, just kind of rotate it, and I'm going to insert that as a rotation. And I'm going to come out to like 149 and rotate it the opposite way, and then just add a rotation. And now go back and press play. See if it shifts for me, or does it just go crazy? No, it turned. Alright, so that looked pretty good. I'm going to go back to frame 1. Now with the camera selected, if you enabled Shakeify, which is your free add-on, you can come down to the actual camera, and then you just scroll all the way down, you'll have a new thing. It'll say camera Shakeify. Let me just collapse some of this stuff I just don't need. So if you go down here to Shakeify, you can just hit the plus symbol. If you've never used this before, it's real easy. So you have presets right here. Okay, so each one is going to do a little something different. So we would probably go with something like spaceship shake, and if you hit play from here, you can see that's looking crazy, right? It's pretty extreme movement. So that's being controlled by the influence. So if I bring the influence down just a touch and then hit the play, you can see that it's going to change stuff. Yeah, it's not too bad. So you can also mess around. There's two other options that work pretty good. The frame offset doesn't seem to do much. So if you take the scale and put it to like 0.5, and then maybe bring the speed down to like 0.75, and then hit play, you'll see it's a pretty smooth transition moving through this corridor. So we don't know what we're moving with. It could be like a spaceship, an animated spaceship or something. So you know what we could do is just put the 3D cursor here and press N. I'm kind of switch over to solid mode for a minute to save the stress on the screen, and go back to Blender Kit, click models, and let's put in spaceship and see what we get. And we'll have to find something that's kind of low poly to work with this, and this is massive. I wouldn't use that. You'd have to scale it down a good bit. And some of these that are locked, you just have to pay a pretty small fee, and then you can unlock all that. Alright, change of plans. I've got something different in mind, because showing scale inside your scene is super important. It really puts a perspective on it. Otherwise, you don't see what's really going on. So I'm going to take this low poly human. So I just typed in man under models and just scrolled over till I got this free one. And I'm going to put him like right here. Now he's going to scale up so big you can't see him, but the empty controls him. So if you grab the empty and move your mouse, I'll just X that out, over and hit scale with your mouse in the left hand corner somewhere, you can kind of bring him in and then just repeat that. Now it's a pretty big guy, so what we're going to do is make this corridor look really big. Alright, pretty cool. So now Shift A, I'm going to drop in a cube, not a plane. Drop in a cube, and I can't see the cube, so I'm going to have to bring the cube down as well the same way. Now what I want to do to kind of like get this where I'm not screwing anything up, I'm going to select my guy, and I'm going to select that. In fact, let's come over here to low poly human and right click, select those objects, then shift right click the cube and now hit / on your number pad. So now you can move freely and kind of like see where these guys are at. So if I hit like 1, what I can do is I can press this, press G and bring this over. So I'm going to keep it on the axis because I want everything to be lined up pretty well. And now I've got my guy. So I'm going to take my guy and see if I can just turn on snap and face project, and then hit G to move him up to the top. See if it even does what I want. Let me grab just the empty. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Yep, okay, so he's on there. So I'm going to just kind of work him around with R and Z and kind of rotate him. So I'm thinking that he's going to go this way, but I'm going to hit / and kind of go back into my scene. Alright, pretty good. So what I want to do is scale this bit down, bring it up, and snap is on, so I don't want that. G and Z to kind of bring this up, and I've already got my keyframes. I'm not really worried about the camera at the moment, so I just want to like bring him back up. You're just gonna have to move things around a little bit to get them where you want them. So with these selected, I'm gonna / back. Okay, that didn't work. Alright, no big deal. If you kind of get out of whack because the camera's locked in, the keyframes are just already there. You can just kind of bring it back to frame 1 down here in the timeline. So what I want to do is get the guy and this, and hit G and X and kind of bring him back. Turn off snap, G and Z, and bring him up. And now I can kind of position him a little bit, maybe bring him a little closer. And what I'm looking to do now is parent this stuff together. So what I'll do is I'll take the empty and I'll highlight it, and then I'll select the cube. And so I'll hit Control P and I'll parent that. So if the cube moves, my guy moves, right? So now my cube, I'm going to parent to the camera. And if all this stuff's kind of like getting in the way, you can just right click our structure and hit H to hide it. So now I'll take the cube and right click on the camera, Control P, and I'm going to parent that. So now wherever the camera moves, our guy is going to move too. So now if I hit Alt H and come back, go back into the Eevee, the material preview, and just hit play. Now we can see we've got our guy going through here, our low poly dude. That's actually pretty cool. So I'm going to pause that, go back to frame 1, and what I'm going to do is just drop a texture on that. So I'm going to bring the Blender kit back up, go to materials, and I'm going to stick with sci-fi and hit enter. And it says sometimes you just got to hit enter twice. You can hit the little eyeball here because it works like the hierarchy, but sometimes it does not want to work. And I want something that's going to glow and something that's kind of going to match the scene a little bit. Maybe there's another blue one in here or something similar. Let's try this and just point the little white stick at the cube. Alright, I really don't like that one, so I'm going to try something different. And you'll notice sometimes you'll select one and bring it down, but it won't be the right texture. Just got to try to grab it and go a little slower. It just means your PC is going a little slow. Alright, that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is add a location on this. So probably I'll just do a location rotation scale again in case I want to change something. And then I'm going to come out to say 150 like before. Keep things uniform. And what I'll do is I'll just have him come into the scene a little bit, into the camera. So G. Alright, so we'll keep this nice and simple. What we're going to do is just going to run him out through the entirety of the complex, and you could break away walls and do all kinds of different things. But what we're going to do is just grab the camera, and I'm going to go ahead and hit frame 300, which stops him here because our last frame is at 150 for his actual movement. And now I can hit G and X and just kind of continuously move him through this mysterious little spot in the middle. And now we're like dead stopped on this wall, right? So we want him to go through it. So I'll hit G and X, and now he's kind of outside the complex, which is pretty cool. So I'll just insert location, rotation, scale here. But the problem is, at this point, he's literally going through a wall, and that doesn't look good. So I'm going to hit Tab with the structure selected, and go up here. You can hit 3 in the number pad, or you can just select face select up here. And now I'm going to highlight this right here. And what I want to do is separate this. So I'll hit spacebar in edit mode and type in separate. And what that's going to do, if we separate by selection, is that's now a brand new mesh. So you have to hit tab to get out, and then this is be selected. You have to select it. Now it's going to do one of two things. You can have it not visible in the viewport. If you were to go over here to object properties and come down to visibility, and what you can do is add a keyframe like right before he hits it, and that's pretty simple, like 234, 235. So we just get him right up to the wall, and what we'll do is we'll add a keyframe to keep that wall live, and then we can hit the right arrow to 236, turn it off, and then add our keyframe. And so right there, boom, he just goes out. Now that's a nice option, and it works good. So if you don't want to like try to figure out any modifiers, totally understand. So what I'll do is I'm just going to hit Control Z back until everything's normal. And what I'll do is I'll go over to the modifier tab, and we're going to add a build. So this is going to start at frame 235, and I'll hit enter. So at 235 this disappears, and what I'll do is I'll just click reversed on that, so when you hit 235 it goes away. And now it looks like the same thing is happening, but that's not true. So this is going to last for 100 frames, but we really don't need it to last that long, as our guy is just going outside and there's no visual effect that we're going to add in this. You could have him turn around and then show the thing being rebuilt, the door. And now it's not going to look too good if we don't bring it back a little bit. So what we'll have to do is say we'll make this 20 so it's quick, and go into edit mode with the door, press W, we'll actually select it, hit W, and then subdivide. And what we can do is run those subdivisions up. 10's not really enough. I would really like to see it about 20, and that shouldn't stress out anybody's computer. And then just go back. And so now if you get close to this thing with the keyframes, it will start disintegrating. Now we have to kind of move the scale back, the start frame. Probably have this start at something like 220. Let's try 210 actually. So as he's coming up, the door is disappearing, and we'll click randomize so it looks a little bit better even. And now you can see as our guy's getting closer, this door is breaking down, and it looks like we could actually start this at 220. That way it's a little bit more visible to whoever's looking. So if you come in, the door is disintegrating and he goes out. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to go back to 1, and now we can play this out. And the Shakeify, it just adds a high level of realism to it. And I've got the door selected, so let me try to like select the camera. Now we don't see the outline on it. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. Alright, and then our guy just kind of stays there and floats for a minute. And I'll show you something cool. If you hit 350 for your amount of keyframes, come over here and press play, you'll see that the camera still keeps going. So Shakeify is always working. And if you wanted to like transition to another, you can keyframe that too. If you want to transition to another one and you're good at keyframes, you can actually add in a second one. So it's kind of like vertex groups in a manner of speaking. You can just add another one. All right, I hope you learned something and understand that the keyframing is pretty powerful. The mesh poly is powerful as well. Highly recommend the mesh poly. It's only $6. The Blender kit is 100% free.